Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Welcome to another installment in the Dragon Hoard series. Video series where I take a look at the dragon magazines in my collection, flip through them, and maybe focus on an article or two. In the last week's episode, we took a look at the very first issue of the 3rd edition era of Dragon Magazine. Today, we are taking a look at an issue that released a couple months later. We're going to be taking a look at issue 277 from November of the year 2000. This was the first issue of Dragon Magazine to release after all 3 of the core books for 3rd edition had finally come out. The Player's Handbook came out in August, the Dungeon Master's Guide came out in September, and the Monster Manual came out in October. So this is the first issue to come out after all 3 of those books are available. So we're going to take a look at this one here. This is an issue that I've honestly never looked at. This predates when I was actually collecting them. This was one of the ones from a box that I bought from a friend of mine when he was paring down his collection in preparation for moving out of province. So this is going to be the first time I'm seeing pretty much all the pages in here. And oh my god, right off the bat, I see one article that I definitely want to take a look at. We've got the new prestige class, Rage Mage. And in the previous video, we took a look at the Designing a Prestige Class article by Monty Cook. And one of the things that he mentioned is that, you should really try to have your prestige classes fill some sort of like organizational role or some sort of like societal or cultural thing, nationality. Like there should be some like degree of thought and world building that goes into designing your prestige classes. And in that video, I mentioned that I wish they would have stuck with that because they started putting out all kinds of weird things. Including the Rage Mage, and I never knew that the Rage Mage existed so early into 3rd edition. I saw it obviously as a reprint in, I think it was Complete Warrior for 3.5, but here we are, November of 2000, graced us with the Rage Mage. We also have an exclusive Greyhawk 2000 setting. They did not call it that, thankfully. It was just the Greyhawk campaign setting. And Greyhawk was actually the default world that the 3rd edition system was designed for. So a lot of the sort of generic adventures were set in Greyhawk locations. It used the Greyhawk deities, at least the major Greyhawk deities for the gods offered in the Player's Handbook. And you had the Living Greyhawk campaign going on for the RPGA. So like I said, I'm really glad they didn't call it Greyhawk 2000. I don't think anything with the like a title and then 2000 preceding it, I don't think any of those have ever been good. So we got that on page 48. We might take a little bit of a look at that as well. Then we have Death and Peril in the Age of Steam. Tracy Hickman explains how not to play D&D. 5 Blades of Legend. Unusual Bards, Sorcerers, and Wizards. Okay. Sage Advice Gets Nasty. That might be worth looking into a little bit too. Nodwick Goes Deep, and Mind Flares Get Sticky. That's just some really gross taglines there for the issue. But let's take a look at what we got here. Like I said, we got some ads here for, looks like the adventures of Merlin, or just Merlin related books. I never got into reading any of those. We have our cover art reproduced along with our table of contents. And oh, that doesn't look right. Was it supposed to be so like pink? I feel like this may have been like a production error because this is like really weirdly colored. But we do get, and it's 2 pages as well, which is weird because they're 2 separate ads. So I think there was just something wrong with the printer. That's actually hard to look at. I feel like I should have like those old 3D glasses on or something. But we've got Baldur's Gate 2, Shadows of Om, so we have another advertisement for that. It is now available. And then we just have an advertisement for Dungeon Magazine and getting subscriptions for that, saving 55% or more. At this point in time, Dungeon Magazine was not doing particularly well. This is sort of before Paizo would really sort of save it. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens with Dungeon as we go forward. Speaking of Dungeon Magazine, once I start getting to the point where I have issues from the same months of both Dragon and Dungeon Magazine, I will be launching a series called Dungeon Delve, where I flip through the installments of the Dungeon Magazine that coincides with the same month as the Dragon Magazine that I looked at in Dragon's Hoard. So one will be sort of at the beginning of the week, and then the other will be sort of at the end of the week. So I will be doing a dungeon-focused series as well. But man, I got to get off that because that's hurting my eyes. We got our editorial and Evergrace, a video game advertisement for the PlayStation 2. I guess the PlayStation 2 was out at this point because it came out in 2000. I think it was actually in October or November of 2000 when it launched, if I recall correctly. So before it was like coming soon, I think they may have had like an advertisement, maybe something PS2 in one of the previous issues, but there we go. Another PlayStation 2 ad, Warriors of Might and Magic by 3DO. Contributors, so it just gives you a rundown of the people that wrote some of the articles for this issue of Dragon Magazine. Stars Supernova Genesis, obviously a PC game, I have no idea. Well, this one's all pink too. I hope that's not all. Yeah, that's weird. There was just obviously some sort of production issue. I don't think somebody would go through and just highlight the whole thing. And actually you can see a little, that's just super weird. I wonder how many more pages are going to look like this. Normally I like to see a couple of letters here, but I think we're just gonna move on here. Oh, you know what? Actually, I do want to take a look at one here, just because I see it right off the top. So we're going to take a look at Punch It by Michael Vergamini. I'm bad at names at the best of times. But it says Punch It. So when I first opened the D&D adventure game, so that's something I've done videos on. I started running a couple of the adventures out of it in a live stream way back in the day. So yeah, the D&D adventure game was one of my earlier items that I added to my D&D collection. I absolutely loved it. But it says, when I first opened the D&D adventure game, I was surprised at the punch-out cardboard chips that came with the adventure. Being a gamer and dungeon master with a low budget, I appreciated these, especially for understanding the new combat rules such as flanking, spell ranges, and attacks of opportunity. Oh boy, the attacks of opportunity is sort of a never-ending headache for the 3rd edition era of D&D. So it was useful for rules such as flanking, spell ranges, and attacks of opportunity without having to buy a boatload of pewter miniatures. Will more chips be printed in future releases, such as the new Monster Manual and published modules? So the letters would have been received before the Monster Manual book came out. Additionally, since there has been debate of the value of the PC portrait articles, why couldn't these artists also place their artwork on more of these punch-outs? A small sheet of cardboard chips could also supplement the Rogues Gallery and Bestiary articles. I could easily see these as a regular staple in the game and a cheap substitute for the pewter and resin miniature line. So this is kind of cool because we know, like nowadays, for example, Paizo, and I don't think Paizo was overseeing the magazines at this point in time. I want to say it was still, I think it was still Wizards of the Coast, but Paizo would actually, they still release their Pawns collection, which are cardstock, two-dimensional miniatures. And Dragon Magazine would actually include a few sort of those cardstock things as well. They would have either some terrain pieces, or they would have like some miniature tokens or things like that. They would usually be done in such a way that you have to cut them out instead of just being able to punch them out so they weren't perforated or anything. But it's still kind of cool that, yeah, somebody was suggesting that and was kind of happy about it. So cool stuff. I really did like the adventure game. Some more novels advertised here. The Servant of the Shard, another in the Legend of Dritz books, and I want to say this might have been close to the time that Todd Lockwood was actually starting to do the illustrations for the covers. Might be a little off on that, but we've got Servant of the Shard, the Nether Scroll, Shadow's Witness, and The City of Ravens. The only one of those books I've actually read would be the Servant of the Shard. Arcanum, so we got another one of those, and another pink, all pink, couple of pages. So you can definitely tell there was some sort of issue. I hope I don't see any more of those. I can already see some. The legacy continues with the new 3rd edition D&D rules, Pool of Radiance, Ruins of Myth Draenor. So really cool stuff there. I don't actually own this game. I'll have to see if I can track it down at some point. Some Dragonlance novels. Some previews. So these are the products that were coming out at this point in time. We have, some of these I actually do own. We have Forge of Fury. So that was the second adventure in the, not really a campaign, but they were just sort of interconnected, loosely adventures that Wizards of the Coast put out during the early days of 3rd edition. The first one was the Sunless Citadel, and like the Sunless Citadel, the Forge of Fury was also reprinted in the Tales from the Yawning Portal book for 5e, so that's kind of cool to see. There's also the Pool of Radiance, the attack on Myth Draenor, which I actually have this module for. I got it a few years back. And the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer, which again has a completely different cover from what the final product would be. The final product just had kind of like a wizard standing on a cliff, but he wasn't really engaged in battle of any sorts. He was just kind of like posing there. So kind of interesting to see that. And again, Living Greyhawk was the RPGA, the living campaign setting. So it was sort of like the official adventures. The modern day equivalent would be Adventurers League. So it was sort of an earlier version of that. I wish this wasn't all pink. God, I hope there's not too many of these. So we've got the Star Wars D20 role-playing game as well. So we have the introductory product, the Star Wars core rulebook, and the Star Wars, I can't even read that, it's orange on pink, the character record sheets, so the character sheets. So yeah, around this time, the prequel movies had been out. Phantom Menace, I think, was the newest one. I don't think Attack of the Clones was out yet. And yeah, Wizards of the Coast was doing a D20 system version of Star Wars, of the Star Wars role-playing game. And I think by the time Revenge of the Sith came out, it was around the time that they revised the Star Wars D20 rules. And it was a precursor to the updates for 3.5. So some of the things that were changed in the Star Wars game were also altered in 3.5. So it was just kind of interesting how that was not only a separate product line, but it was kind of also a testing ground for new ideas, along with like D20 Modern. But again, all that pink is just so hard on the eyes. Then we just got some more novels. Oh. Age of Sail 2. Never heard of that one either. Dragonscroll.com. Countdown to the Forgotten Realms. Oh, okay. Actually, kind of want to take a look at this just a little bit. Because this is the Forgotten Realms campaign setting. It wasn't the first campaign setting book that I owned, but it is one of my favorites for the 3rd edition one. So I guess this was on its way out. So it just sort of gives you some like the different elves and their racial adjustments. It doesn't give you like any of their abilities, but it gives you some of their racial adjustments. So Sun Elves, for example, got -2 to Strength, +2 to Dex, -2 to Con, or +2 to Intelligence. Wood Elves, Copper Elves, were they? I never refer to them as Copper Elves. I always refer to them as Wood Elves. +2 to Strength, +2 to Dex, -2 to Con, -2 to Intelligence, -2 to Charisma. So some, greater bonuses, but also greater drawbacks. I wonder if those actually remain, because that seems like a lot of attribute modifiers. Wild Elves, +2 to Dex, -2 to Intelligence, and then you've got Drow male and female, because they actually had different racial modifiers. So the male Drow received +2 to Dex, +2 to Intelligence, -2 to Con, -2 to Charisma, and then the female Drow had +2 to Dex, +2 to Intelligence, +2 to Charisma, -2 to Con. It's interesting that it was Intelligence and not Wisdom, since females tended to be, in Drow society, they were the only ones that could be clerics. But yeah, kind of interesting there. And then prestige classes, you've got the Archmage, the Champion, the Devotee, the Disciple, Giant Killer, I don't remember that one from the book. Harper, Hathrin, the Witch of Rashomon, the Hierophant, or Hierophant, Purple Dragon Officer. I don't recall them calling it that either. I think it was just Purple Dragon or Purple Dragon Knight. Red Wizard, Runecaster, Seeker, Shadow Adept, Shadow Thief, and the Spell Filcher. I don't recognize that one either. It's been a while since I looked through that book. And then just mention Zentil Keep has a new champion of Scullia. The new realms are all about your heroes facing smart, powerful villains. Here's a sneak peek at one of the most dangerous. So Scullia Darkhope or Scullia Darkhope. Lawful Evil, Human, Female, Paladin 5, Rogue or Ranger 4, and Blackguard 6. So cool stuff. Dork Tower, another amazing comic, one that if you haven't, you should really look at. RPG Maker for the original PlayStation. Holy crap. I've seen some things that people have done with this, and I kind of wish that that was on the PlayStation Classic. If I ever do get around to like adding stuff to it, I think that's one that I would probably add. All right, so here is our Age of Steam article. So this is a steampunk adventures for the D&D game. I'm not big into steampunk, so this probably isn't going to be one of the articles that I focus on in this video. But if you are interested in it, let me know, and I can definitely do a separate video on it. You got Mage Tech, so steampunk settings also offer the possibility of combining magic and technology in new and unusual ways. Want a +2 revolver? How about a pocket watch with the abilities of a wand of suggestion? It's a weird combination. I guess it's not, because you use the pocket watch to hypnotize. That's fair. Or a magical engine that provides levitation to allow a ship to fly through the air. I feel like the people that were writing this article were pretty big on like Final Fantasy VI or Final Fantasy III for the Super Nintendo. Recommended reading, so it gives you some authors and a couple of books associated with them. So you get like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and his Sherlock Holmes stories are required reading for a Victorian era campaign. Then you got some other ones here. H.G. Wells. Not a lot of Alan Moore. Not a lot of names that I recognize, because again, steampunk and Victorian era stuff's not really my major thing, but still kind of cool. So here we have Greyhawk 2000. God, I hate that name. I'm so glad it didn't stick. What? So, okay, with a little imagination. Oh, this was not an actual, like, trying to rebrand Greyhawk. This was literally turning Greyhawk into a modern day, like, real world style setting. So with a little imagination, you can bring your campaign into the modern day with a fresh take on the D&D experience. Just remember, the technology isn't the only thing that progresses. Any world might go through some social, political, and even religious changes that Earth has gone through, from the rise of new forms of government and new economic engines to new approaches to spirituality. Okay, so I guess, again, they would eventually do a D20 modern RPG, Wizards of the Coast did. So again, it's interesting to see some like early seeds kind of planted for some other products. I'm not going to go through this entire article. This is a pretty lengthy one, and I play Dungeons and Dragons to embrace the fantasy, like the medieval fantasy settings. But it is kind of cool that they had this, and again, it's almost like you could like something that they were toying with that eventually became a separate product line, which is pretty cool. Future fantasy futures when you don't want to get medieval in your D&D game. And you got a Merlin. Oh, okay. Elements of a Hero, The Heroes of the Lost Years of Merlin. Oh, so that's actually a tie-in to the novel series that we saw advertised earlier on. So you get some of the characters from there. Again, I've never read any of those books, so I do not recognize any of the... I mean, I recognize, obviously, Merlin. He's pretty well known. All right, so Unusual Suspects. Let's take a look at this one just a little bit. Again, I may not go through the entire article, just because there is kind of a lot to it, but let's just see here. So we got unusual bards, sorcerers, and wizards. So defining each race's particular approach to arcane magic can be an interesting way of highlighting the differences among common races. Whether you're a dungeon master or a player, consider some of these options for non-human arcane spellcasters to make each race's wizards, sorcerers, and bards unique. So this was the first edition of D&D where any race could be any class. With second edition AD&D and first edition AD&D, humans could be any class, but then your other demi-human races of elves, dwarves, half-elves, half-orcs, gnomes, and halflings, they were much more limited in not only what classes they could take, but how many levels they could gain in each class. So with third edition, all of that was removed. And in basic expert, for example, humans could be fighters, clerics, thieves, or magic users. And your like dwarves, halflings, and elves were actually their own class, and they weren't even given the option to choose between, like, you couldn't make a dwarf cleric, for example. Dwarves were basically just fighters with a few extra abilities like infravision. Halflings were essentially thieves, but not quite as good as thieves, if I recall correctly. It wasn't a typically chosen class in basic, as far as I've been told. And elves were kind of like a multi-class fighter, magic user kind of thing. So this was the first edition where you really could choose any race and class combination and progress all the way from 1st to 20th level. So it was kind of a big thing. So articles like these were probably a good idea to really hammer home that sort of notion, especially if you were used to first and second edition AD&D or even BX. So bards, according to the player's handbook, bards are usually humans, elves, or half-elves, while dwarven and half-orc bards suffer somewhat from their charisma penalty. There is no reason these races, as well as gnomes and halflings, cannot have bardic traditions in your campaign. They might, however, be rather different from the traditions of humans and elves. So for dwarves, though they are not performers in the truest sense of the word, dwarven chanters accompany their people in many circumstances from the grueling work of mining to the harsh task of war, their deep voices rumbling and resonating in the very stone. These dwarven bards inspire their companions to greater exertion and courage in battle. They are also keepers of their clan's history and lore, which they can never repeat to non-dwarves. Their favorite types of performance include chanting and drumming. So, though dwarven strongholds tend to be isolated and insular, there is often a need for formal communication. Among them, or even between different clans in the same stronghold, this task often falls to members of an unusual clan, the Dwarven Heralds. This clan has representatives in many different strongholds acting as messengers, diplomats, advisors, chroniclers, and even spies. Those heralds are, of course, bards, whose wandering lifestyle, cosmopolitan attitudes, and breadth of knowledge and experience make them excellent adventurers, though they value the ties of their clan as much as any dwarf. Their particular clan is committed to an itinerant lifestyle and an open-minded view of the world, so they rarely have much difficulty balancing competing claims on their allegiance. These heralds focus on skills like diplomacy, bluff, knowledge local, and sense motive, and their favorite forms of performance include historical recitation and clan genealogy. Certainly there are dwarves who are more musically inclined than stereotype would lead other races to believe. The dwarves in Tolkien's Hobbits formed a chamber music ensemble to tell the history of the Misty Mountains' fall to Smaug. Dwarven bards might be remarkably similar to human or half-elf minstrels, though perhaps favoring a different selection of instruments, and certainly focusing on dwarven concerns in their collection of knowledge and saga. They perform on instruments like viols, horns, baritone flutes, and woodwinds, and they are often accomplished singers, but they rarely dance. Okay, so that was actually pretty cool. Again, I don't know if I want to read all of these, so I'll just take a look at like one suggestion for each of the races they give here. So we'll take a look at elves here. So there's nothing inherently unusual about an elven bard, as described in the player's handbook, for a variation on the common theme, considering the following options. So we'll take a look at the middle one here. So it says bards in other elven societies are not merely advisors to kings, they are chieftains in their own right, leaders of both war and state in somewhat primitive elven tribes. Skilled at combat, magic, and music, three fields their people value highly. Bards are natural leaders, gathering bands of loyal companions around them, even at low levels. Led by a bard, such a band and adventuring party can aspire to great power, gaining control first of a small region of pasture land, then gathering desperate tribes under desperate, not desperate, desperate tribes under their banner, and finally, with luck and skill, forming a new nation out of those united tribes. So, yeah, kind of neat. We'll take a look at gnomes here. So gnomes, many gnomes have a natural penchant for performance. So gnomes would actually have their favorite class changed in 3.5 from from like Wizard Illusionist, which is a specialty mage in the third edition, or specialty mage, to begin with. So they were changed from that to bards in 3.5. So they definitely have a penchant or a penchant for performance. They love telling stories and often accompanying their tales with illusions. There's that illusionist. Created through their innate magic talents. Some of these gnomes take their performance a step further, becoming bards or multi-class bard illusionists, while imbuing their stories with supernatural power. While few gnome stories lack humor, sometimes the funniest stories are the funniest stories are the most effective in boosting the morale of an adventuring party or inspiring its members. Words are really hard all of a sudden. Inspiring its members to greater deeds. Smiling broadly, many a hero has found strength in himself he never knew he had, thanks to the inspiration of a gnome bard. So they only give one option here for the bard, so let's read it. A reclusive band of forest gnomes, see the Monster Manual, page 107, lives in close harmony with the woods around their home. The leaders of this band are multi-class bard druids who sing, hum, and whistle as they wander through the trees, speaking to all of the forest creatures. They make no distinction between their bard spells and their druid spells and cast both through their elaborate songs. Before becoming full members of this order of tenders, as they are called, a young gnome must spend several years in the outside world learning the ways and discovering the means to defend the forest against any incursion. Once in a while, one of these young tenders in training becomes enamored with the outside world and continues his wandering, usually with a group of adventuring companions, caring in his own way for all the forests and natural places that he finds. Okay, again, I don't know if I want to read through all of these. There's actually quite a bit to it. So let's take a look at halflings here. So halflings who are not part of a nomadic band are sometimes struck with wanderlust and might take up the road alone or with a small group of companions. Some of these halflings are bards as well, known for their trail songs and their whistling ability. They learn magic in bits and pieces on their journeys, adapting spells to their musical casting method and collecting legends, gossip, and local lore in the same way, weaving them all together into songs for the road that range from the body to the foreboding. So I think they're going to do this for like all of the... Yeah, so we got bards. Do we have sorcerers? Oh yeah, we do have sorcerers. Okay. Again, I don't think I'm going to read through all of these. Let's just take a look at elf sorcerers, and we'll take a look at one of the wizard options. Just because like elves typically weren't really sorcerers, they tended to be more wizards. In fact, wizard was their favorite class for their race. So let's just take a look at what we have here. So elves. A group of elves living on the coast in close contact with their aquatic kin believe that sorcery originated with the Tritons, who gave their magical gift to those elves, air or water breathing, who won their favor. So the sorcerers among these elves feel a strong tie to the sea, and they often serve as envoys between the elves of the land and their kin in the sea. Okay, that's kind of neat. Actually, I kind of want to read this one here. So a sorcerer gnome. So the barbaric gnomes of the Great Swamp mentioned in Unusual Subjects in Article 275. Unfortunately, I don't have that issue. Could have sorcerers among their numbers, living in primitive society with no formal schools of magic. The sorcerers of this lizard-riding savage tribe of gnomes fight alongside their barbarian companions, lending their spells such as illusions, evocations, or even necromancy, raising undead hordes from the corpses of swamp creatures to raid their enemies' camps. And then we'll just take a look at wizards. I'm going to take a look at an elf wizard example that they give here and a half-orc wizard, just because half-orc is definitely an unusual choice. Again, elven wizards are like sort of one of the default things that you would kind of look at. So we'll just take a look at elves here. So elven wizards are quite common, and wizard is an elven character's preferred multi-class. So that's, yeah, their favorite class. To elves, magic is an art form, an expression of the innate beauty of the cosmos, and a way for an elf to shape the cosmos according to their own creative inspiration. Elves are magical creatures, and wizard magic comes naturally to them. For a twist to your game, however, consider these options. I'm just going to focus on one here. Because they view the practice of magic as an art form, elves in some societies can only specialize in the schools of transmutation or illusion. If elves are masters of illusion, consider making gnomes strong in a different school instead of the illusion school like they are is their favorite class. The true creative expression in these elves' eyes is to shape the world, or at least its appearance, by molding it with magic. They spurn destructive magic effects like those from the evocation school. And half-orcs. This is going to be interesting. So half-orcs. Half-orcs are often outcast from both human and orc society from the moment of their birth. Perhaps a half-orc wizard character was a foundling or orphan who was raised by a kindly wizard or by a not-so-kindly wizard who taught the child magic, in the hope of creating a powerful, utterly loyal underling for her villainous schemes. Along the same lines, a half-orc wizard might have been a slave to an evil wizard, an uncharacteristic act of kindness or benevolence on the part of his master, basically sort of let them go, or they snuck out. So cool stuff. I kind of like these suggestions, and again, it's just nice to see some of these ideas for sort of shaping your campaign. So again, really cool stuff here. So we got the Tracy Hickman article on how you play the game or how not to play the game. So let's see what we got. So this is how to play the game. Wait a minute. How not to play. Okay. There might be more to this article. But 6 things that I guess, let's just see here. How to play heroically. So we got find your character's kryptonite. Give your character automatic reactions. Take charge of your own destiny. Be dramatic, be creative, be thoughtful of other players' needs. Kind of a bit of a weird mix of things there. Like the find your character's kryptonite actually sounds kind of adversarial, but at the end, I don't know, it's an interesting list. The boring, long-lived characters. So it sounds like, I'm not going to read, like I said, read through this entire article. There's just kind of a lot to go through there. But yeah, options on how to play heroically. So, that's actually those options there. So find your character's kryptonite. We all know how helpful character backgrounds can be. Don't let your character just spring out of nowhere. Okay, so just kind of character developing stuff. But again, this is the article is actually different than the tagline, because this seems like things that you should do, and the thing on the cover said things not to do. So I don't know. It looks like we got some fiction here, so we're just gonna skim past that. All right, we got some subscription cards. There's the last issue of Dragon that I took a look at. Oh, I kind of wish I had that issue of Dungeon. That looks really cool. Versus Orcs. They aren't just sword fodder anymore. Okay. You know what? This is only, I think, a single page article, isn't it? Or yeah, it's only a single page article. So let's take a look at this one as well. So Versus Orcs. They aren't just sword fodder anymore. Many heroes unwisely regard orcs as stupid, filthy, slothful foes, unworthy of their best effort, easily bested in a few minutes swordplay or a single well-placed spell. A band of orcs is no match for any seasoned adventuring company. Well, pride goeth before the fall, they say, and more than one beautiful champion, or boastful champion, I'm having trouble seeing through my tripod here. Boastful champion has met his end beneath a common orc's axe. Orcs were actually pretty nasty in 3rd edition 3.0 because I think their challenge rating was only like 1/2, so 2 of them was sort of considered an appropriate challenge for a first level character, but they used great axes, so they were doing like a d12 plus like 4 damage or something like that, so they could effectively knock out or outright kill almost any character at first level. So they were actually not to be taken lightly. So I actually kind of like the way orcs were done. I actually even had a campaign where orcs played a major role in it, even into like 20th level or even going to epic levels. So I've always liked orcs. One-on-one, an orc is every bit as tough as a low-level adventurer, and orcs are never found alone. They delight in battle and can easily overwhelm a band of overbold adventurers with a sudden, well-planned rush. Unlike smaller creatures such as goblins or kobolds, orcs have the strength and weaponry to kill a stout adventurer with a single blow. I just said that. Make a mistake against goblins and you'll be driven back in disgrace. Make a mistake against orcs, you'll be counting your dead. So tips versus orcs. So avoid melee, use range attacks and spells. Force will saves, especially area effect spells like scare or sleep. Keep out of charge range. Use elements of the environment to your best advantage. So charging, you had to go in a straight line, but you could not charge through any sort of difficult terrain. So I think what they kind of mean is if there was like really thick brush or sort of like crumbled walls in between you and the orc, they couldn't just charge you that way. So again, pretty cool advice. Keep a clear line of retreat open and swarm the leader. Soften the group before you tackle the head honcho. So preparation. Small bands of common orcs aren't going to be your campaign's chief worry for long. With a level or 2 under your belt, you'll handle them easily. But orc champions and chieftains are often a match for more advanced heroes. Chances are you'll be fighting orcs throughout your adventuring career. Here are some ways to get ready. So get a ranged weapon. So this thing goes into a little bit more detail here. So get a ranged weapon. Save some money for a light crossbow, bow, or javelin. Any orc you kill at range is an orc who won't get to swing his axe at you. If you think you'll be doing a lot of missile fire, take the point-blank shot feat, which is a good idea. Many of your archery duels in dungeons will be close range work. So yeah, not bad advice. Learn spells that work at range. Most spells did. Prefer magic over steel. You'll like blasting, bewitching, and befuddling orcs as long as you stay out of axe range. Area effect spells are a plus. Since you'll often fight multiple orcs, any spell forcing a will saving throw is also a good choice given the typical orc's lousy will save. Mobility. Build your character to use all the battlefield instead of rooting himself in one spot. When the orcs charge you to put an end to your long-range attacks, you want to be able to disengage and keep your ranged and magic attacks. The mobility feat, prerequisite for dodge, is very useful for this. The shot on the run feat is even better. So mobility allows you to, I think it gives you a bonus to your armor class against attacks of opportunity. And if you disengage and do anything other than just move, like if you try to make an attack or use do a spell or use like a scroll or drink a potion, then you would get an attack of opportunity against you. So mobility was good for that. The dodge feat in 3rd edition and 3.5 sucked. It was a +1 dodge bonus to your armor class, but you had to declare one specific target. Pathfinder 1st edition fixed that by just having it be a +1 bonus to your armor class against any and all attacks. So it did. Mobility was good if you were going to do a lot of moving, or even things like if you use a ranged weapon while you're being threatened with a melee attack, then you still want that bonus to your armor class that it provides. And this is power attack and cleave. The typical orc is all offense, no defense. If these orcs get to axe range, you'll want to hit them as fast as possible to reduce their opportunity to score a lucky hit on you. With the cleave feat, prerequisite power attack, you'll get a free attack anytime you down one, maximizing your combat power against such creatures such as these. And yeah, that's true. Cleave is a great feat. Power attack is a great feat. I am currently running a 3.5 game, and Roll Stats is in it, and he's playing a Dwarven fighter currently who is pretty fond of his two-handed weapon power attack because it does nasty amounts of damage. And then we got tactics. So now you're ready to go orc hunting. Pay attention or your character will finish his career as an orc warrior's axe rest. So don't mix it up until you have to. Given their high strength scores and heavy damage melee weapons, typically great axes, orcs have nothing better to do than to chop at your character in a toe-to-toe battle. Even if your character is pretty tough, sooner or later, an orc's going to get lucky and score a high damage critical hit with that big axe. Don't give the orcs extra chances to get lucky. Phrasing. Keep them at a distance and wear them down with spells and missiles. So that kind of reiterates some of the earlier stuff there. Cast the best spell. If you're a cleric, some of these spells you'll find very useful, including Cause Fear, Command, Doom, and Random Action. I actually don't remember the Random Action spell. Anyway, Enthrall or Hold Person, which is a second level spell. If you're a wizard, just about any enchantment or illusion spells are good. First level spells that give orcs fits include Color Spray, Charm Person, Hypnotism, Silent Image, and especially Sleep. Good second level spells include Glitter Dust, Hypnotic Pattern, Mirror Image, Scare, and Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Watch out that your friends don't attack the subject of your Charm Person, because that breaks the effect. Even if, don't the Charm Person spell the same round you cast it, even an orc that made that saving throw. Okay. If you charm somebody, the player shouldn't attack them right away anyway. Fight outside. Look for ways to lure orcs out of close quarter dungeons and caves they favor. In confined spaces, they'll be at axe range from round 1. You'll want to get them out in the open. A clever suggestion, a clever illusion, a well-placed suggestion, or even disguise and bluff checks might give you the hook you need to fish these orcs out of the stronghold. And then the covered retreat. So the orcs charge you, and now everyone in your party is in melee. Here's how you get out of it. Half your party, the toughest fighters, stands fast, holding the orcs in melee. Everybody else uses the run option to move straight back away from the orcs, avoiding attacks of opportunity and moving to a comfortable range. In the following round, because if you do disengage and just run straight away, like in a straight direction away from the enemy that you're engaged in melee with, there's no attacks of opportunity. So it says in the next round, after they move out of the way, the characters in the front can move back while the rear characters resume their missile fire. Given enough space, you can back away faster than the orcs can charge you because running you moved at 4 times your speed. So a normal move, like just say if you had a 30-foot move, you could take a double move for 60, or you could run for 120 feet. So that's kind of what it's suggesting that you do there. You can back away faster than they can charge you, and keep your best armored fighters between the orcs and your vulnerable characters. So yeah, kind of a cool article. New weapons of the Forgotten Realms. So these are sort of legendary weapons. We have Ashram. That's a lot to read, so I don't think I'm going to go through that. I want to see if I actually recognize any of these swords. I don't think I'm going to. I didn't know if they'd have like Icing Death or something like that in here, but Orcbane. Nope, not too much there. Volo, hey, the Adventures of Volo. Dragon Wing Stew. Like actual food combinations. So PC Portrait. So this actually ties to that letter that we read at the beginning of the video. These are things that could have easily been turned into appropriately scaled tokens. So really cool stuff here. Oh, God damn it. All right, so here we got the Rage Mage. And this is by Monty Cook. Monty Cook wrote the article about, like, you know, using clever thought, world building, and all that stuff to create your prestige classes. And he's the one that made the friggin' Rage Mage. All right. At first, it seems like a contradiction, an arcane spellcaster that loses herself in a blind fury. Yet the Rage Mage makes for an interesting case, does it? As her approach to magic is based on the primal passion of magic more than the studious quasi-scientific approach, the Rage Mage prestige class is sure to enliven any campaign, as it raises fascinating questions on the true nature of magic and magic use. But don't ask the Rage Mage to answer those questions herself. She's not interested in the why, only the results. Alright, so let's look at their features. So the Rage Mage can tap into the primal essence of magic using her own natural anger and frenzy to channel the arcane power in flashy, flamboyant ways. Like the Barbarian, the Rage Mage is often the product of less civilized societies. Is that how you built it into your world building, Monty? The thing that you've made some really great points about just like 4 issues ago? All Rage Mages must have at least some background as a Barbarian, as well as training as a Wizard, Sorcerer, or very rarely the Bard. So that'd be part of the requirements. Rage Mage NPCs are usually found working with Barbarians. They tend to shy away from traditional spellcasters and avoid the colleges and guilds where they usually gather. Alright, so the requirements is any non-lawful, because to be a Barbarian you had to have a non-lawful alignment. I think you had to actually have a chaotic alignment, but at the very least you have to be non-lawful here. You have to have a base attack bonus of 5, you have to have the combat casting feat, the rage special ability, and you must be able to cast at least first level arcane spells. So essentially you need to be at least 6th level before you can qualify for this class. This would be a prestige class that you would gain at level 7. Because the base attack of +5, you're better off doing 5 levels of Barbarian to get that, because Wizards only get an increase of their base attack bonus every other level, whereas Barbarians get them every single level. And even things like Clerics and Thieves, or Bards and Rogues, they get an increase of 2 to their base attack for every 3 levels that they gain. So you'd probably go either first level, you probably want to go first level Barbarian anyway, just because you get the D12 hit dice. But yeah, so you need to have first level arcane spellcasting capability, so 1 level of an arcane spellcasting class, and like I said, probably 5 levels of Barbarian just to get that +5 base attack as quickly as possible. Class features, wait a minute. I think that's a typo. Or a misprint, because it says the Hunter of the Dead's class skills, but this should be the Rage Mage class skills. So the skills are actually make sense for the Rage Mage, as much as I hate that sentence. But the Hunter of the Dead was a different prestige class that I think they featured in a previous article, so I think that's just a mistake there. But so the class skills that you get when you take a level in this class are Concentration, Knowledge Arcana, Spellcraft, and Profession. So for armor and weapon proficiency, Rage Mages are proficient with simple and martial weapons, but no types of armor or shield. Spell bonus, at 2nd level and beyond, when casting spells of the Abjuration, Conjuration, Evocation, Necromancy, and Transmutation schools, the Rage Mage uses her character level rather than her class level when determining the effects of the spells. Okay, so you would use your total character level for like how many d6 that a fireball spell does, for example. So that's fine. Spell Rage. When she needs to, the Rage Mage can enter a state of cold-blooded, white-hot fury. The Barbarian Rage is a screaming blood frenzy, but the Spell Rage is completely internalized. In fact, many Rage Mages are known to grow much quieter in the midst of their rage as they focus all their anger within. In a Rage Mage gains phenomenal magical ability, but becomes reckless and less able to defend themselves. She temporarily suffers a -2 penalty to armor class, which is normal for Rage. The benefits, however, are this. She increases the DC of any spell of the Abjuration, Conjuration, Evocation, Necromancy, and Transmutation school cast during the Rage by her class level. Oh, okay. So you get basically like an extra boost to the DC. Interesting. And all effects of those spells of those schools are treated as if they were cast by a caster level 2 levels higher than the Rage Mage. Okay. So if you were a 4th level Rage Mage and you cast a Fireball, or maybe Fireball's not the best example, but you cast a spell that does like extra effects based on your level, you would be treated as 2 levels higher. Unlike Barbarian's Rage, a Rage Mage can use any type of skill or feat while raging. A fit of rage lasts for 3 rounds plus the character's Constitution modifier. A Rage Mage can prematurely end the rage voluntarily at the end of the rage. The Rage Mage is fatigued, -2 to strength, -2 to dex, and can't charge or run for the duration of that encounter unless the Rage Mage is 10th level, when this limitation no longer applies. The Rage Mage can only fly into a rage once per encounter. Okay, that's okay, only once per encounter, but they're still limited by the number of times they can do it per day. Okay, because barbarians have a limit per day of how many times they can rage. So you got like spell rage once per day, twice per day, 3 times per day. But yeah, the rage can only do it during their action, not in response to somebody else's action. So you can't rage as a reaction in D&D, which is fine. Note that a character cannot enter both a barbarian rage and a spell rage at the same time. The 2 rages are just too different. Spells beginning at 1st level. A Rage Mage gains the ability to cast a small number of arcane spells. To cast a spell, the Rage Mage must have a Charisma score. Okay, so uses Charisma of at least 10 plus the spell level. So a Rage Mage with a Charisma 10 or lower cannot cast these spells. Rage Mage bonus spells are based off Charisma, and saving throws against the spells have a DC of 10 plus the spell level plus the Charisma modifier. When the Rage Mage gets 0 spells of a given level, such as 0 1st level spells at 1st level, the Rage Mage only gets the bonus spells. So that's a normal thing too for some of the secondary spellcasting classes. A Rage Mage without a bonus spell for that level cannot yet cast a spell of that level. The Rage Mage's spell list appears below. The number of spells of a given level that a Rage Mage might know from this list is given in the sidebar below. A Rage Mage casts spells just as a sorcerer does, so they're spontaneous. So, even though you could be a wizard or a bard to qualify for this class, it's probably best to do it as a sorcerer because you're doing spontaneous spell casting and you don't need a spell book, for example. So the Rage Mage spells, because they are spontaneously cast and they're not like prepared rituals like a wizard spell is, I don't think these spells would actually transfer over into your spell book directly, or at least for free. I'm not going to go through all the spells that they get, but they'll have things. I'm sure they've got, they got like Magic Missile, Mage Armor, the protection spells, which is pretty good. Shocking Grasp, Summon Monster, 2nd level like Mel's Acid Arrow, Web. Do they get Sleep? I don't think they get Sleep. No, they don't get Sleep. But they do get Cause Fear, Chill Touch. Some cool stuff there. Hold Portal, Cat's Grace, Bull Strength. So they do get some stat buffs, so they can still cast spells to beef up the rest of the party. Ghoul Touch, Glitter Dust, Obscurement, Protection from Arrows, Spectral Hand. 3rd level, of course, you're going to have Fireball. It's the 3rd spell down. Dispel Magic. Fly. Okay, that's cool. Gaseous Form. Lightning Bolt. All kinds of interesting stuff there. At 4th level, they can bestow Curse amongst other spells. Solid Fog, Shout, Fire Shield, Ice Storm, Evert's Black Tentacles, Wall of Fire, Wall of Ice, Enervation. Enervation's kind of nasty, so interesting stuff. Overcome Spell Failure. Oh, this might be interesting. So at 5th level, a Rage Mage can ignore a 10% or lower chance of spell failure from armor. The spell failure chances of higher than 10% are lowered by 10%. So if you're wearing like a breastplate or a chain shirt, for example, they do have a percent chance if you try to cast an arcane spell of failure. So actually being able to reduce that by 10% is not bad. And then spell retention. Upon reaching 10th level, a Rage Mage that casts spells gained from her class while raging does not count against those spells against her daily limit. Okay, so, I mean, overall, like, it's not a bad prestige class in terms of what you actually get. It's just the dumbest name I have ever heard. Like, there had to have been something better that they could have called this. There just had to be. I mean, again, it could have even just been things like Well, again, like the rage thing doesn't actually work the same way as regular rage anyway. So I don't know. Like I said, the abilities are actually not that bad overall. It's just a bad name. I can't think of a name off the top of my head to call it that would be better. But they could, I'm sure they could do something better than Rage Mage. Rage Mage feels like a placeholder name that they just never got rid of. And before people criticize me for not being able to think of anything better, I'm not an industry professional with the pedigree of someone like Monty Cook, especially during this period of time. And it is also like 1 a.m. in the morning, so my brain doesn't work all that great at this time of night anyway. So let's just cut me a little bit of slack. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think would be a better name for the Rage Mage? Because I'm sure you guys can come up with some better stuff than that. So there you go. Then we got the Rogues Gallery. Just has some sample NPCs. What the hell? A Twisted Album ad? Okay. It's weird. So one of the things that I've always said was that with like Dragon Magazine and Dungeon Magazine, the ads have always been catered towards like gaming related stuff. I have no idea why this is in here, but I guess it is. I mean, I can't imagine like Twisted worked on the D&D movie soundtrack. I mean, I have no idea. Anyway, we'll just breeze past that. Nodwick, classic. You really need to read that. And then we got Forum. So, Forum. Is that not Sage Advice? Did that replace Sage Advice? I guess we still got some more stuff to go. So Forum. So how do player characters' ages factor into your game? Oh, okay. Do members of long-lived races such as elves or dwarves benefit from greater knowledge and experience? Should elves, dwarves, and so on be mature and experienced at the age of majority? Okay, so that's kind of neat. Yeah, okay. I just saw Poison Paladins, and that seems kind of weird for this question. But let's just read Poison Paladins for a second. So for the most part, my enthusiasm and support for 3E has been great. The art is the best it's ever been. Well, some things were really good. Some things were questionable, like Davis the Bard. And the game mechanics are smoother and more logical than I ever thought they would be. That I do agree with. However, I do have a few minor issues that I believe could be problematic. Doesn't tie to character age. Weird things get inserted into certain things. Anyway, first off, I am unclear why the Paladin was left as a straight class, while the Blackguard or Anti-Paladin is a prestige class. Well, I mean, to be the Blackguard, you had to be a Paladin. Well, I guess you didn't have to be a Paladin, but there were benefits to being a Paladin first. So the Blackguard, for example, you could just qualify for it, I think, on its own. I don't think you necessarily had to have the Paladin class for it. But if you were a Paladin and then fell and became a Blackguard, you could actually trade your Paladin levels for an equal number of Blackguard levels. So you could trade, like, for example, 3 levels of Paladin to get up to, like, a 3rd level ability for the Blackguard. So, yeah, okay. We're going to move on for that. I might revisit that at a later time. Because, again, like, the different things that I'm seeing here, like domains, the Paladin stuff, like, that has nothing to do with ages of characters, so... But it might be fun to revisit that article as well. We got Mind Flayers, which is just like a crossword puzzle kind of thing. Oh, we actually got a poster in here for the D&D miniatures line. I kind of wish I could take a look at this, but again, this is a glue strip, which you can see the glue strip through here. That's been stuck in this page for almost 22 years now, so that's staying, but we do see like the Beholder, the Troll. These actually predated the Chainmail miniatures, which Chainmail actually replaced the D&D miniatures line for a while. Oh, exceptions to previous rules. Interesting. So already they were kind of reiterating certain things like move only, so disengaging, 5-foot step, being flat-footed. Okay, combat reflexes. There's Sage Advice. Okay. Yeah, so Sage Advice, it might become its own series in the future where I just look at different Sage Advice articles and just sort of go through the things that people were having questions about or asking for clarifications on. But I'm not going to do that right now because this video's already gone a little bit longer than I would have liked. I try to keep these under an hour. I'm looking at the time on this now, and we're just a little over an hour. And here we got Silicon Sorcery, Warlord's Battlecry. Again, I've never heard of that one as well. SSGs. I don't know who SSG was. I know who SSI was. An ad for Reaper miniatures. And we got the role-playing for internet players, RPGrealms.com. So I think that was like a play-by-post kind of thing. And then Dungeon Craft. It's interesting to me to see Dungeon Craft in Dragon Magazine because I'm so used to the reformat era where they kind of broke out all the DM-specific stuff from Dragon Magazine and put it into Dungeon Magazine. But let's see what we get. I'm just going to take a quick look at, so we got Divine Secrets. One of the gods walks amongst us. The gods are, okay, so just different ways to handle gods in your campaign. They could be, if they're like more active, if they're more kind of obscure, or you're not really sure if their existence is real or not, or they could be just gone altogether. So cool stuff there. What's new with Phil and Dixie? One World Minigames, RPGA Network, and we've got another, oh god, an Insane Clown Posse ad. What the hell is going on with this issue of Dragon? I've never seen, I don't recall ever seeing CD, like bands, especially Twisted and Insane Clown Posse. Does not seem like it fits D&D, but they're there, so there you go. An interesting issue overall of Dragon. So options for updating a medieval fantasy setting, suggestions for bringing it into like a modern era, or at least the modern era as of 22 years ago. Again, the Tracy Hickman explains how not to play D&D. It's weird because the article was actually on like things to do, so it's the opposite of what the tagline reads there. The unusual bards and sorcerers and wizard stuff was kind of cool. Again, it was a lengthy article. I didn't want to go into like all of them just because it was going to take quite a while to get through. But overall, a pretty decent issue of Dragon Magazine. It's probably the least favorite of the ones that I've looked at so far. With probably the last issue being the one that I liked the most of the three that I've done so far. I'm not going to like try to rank them or anything like that. But it's an okay issue of Dragon in my opinion. And we've got the Rage Mage. So that's a good point to end the video on. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And be sure to come back next week when we take a look at issue number 278, December of 2000. Until then, though, take care.